When your favorite artist releases an album that is perfect 100% of the way through, no skips, no issues, it can almost feel like heaven's light shining down upon you. But more often than not, there tends to be just one small thing missing. Or rather, something that should be missing. Today, we are talking about albums that I consider to be perfect, except for just one song. These are going to be some of my all-time favorite albums that I feel very strongly about. They're beautifully constructed and well executed, where in my opinion there is just one song that if removed would make the album a perfect 10 out of 10. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every other song is perfect, nor does it mean that the one song removed is absolutely garbage terrible. When you listen to a good album, you can tell there's a lot of intention behind every single track, where it's placed, and how the story and world of the album is created from song to song. And I believe that is the case for all these albums I'm going to be talking about. The way I see it, not every song needs to be perfect to make a powerful, strong album. But for some reason, even the albums that do that best still sometimes have that one song that sticks out like a sore thumb, whether it's a song I personally dislike or that just doesn't make sense with the rest of the album. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's worth it to note that I've already done full discography rankings for a good few of my favorite artists, and so a lot of the odd one out songs I have in this list are songs I've already griped about before, and so I might just be bringing that up as we go, just FYI. Also remember, this is all in good fun and just my opinion. I know how passionate y'all can get, I get it, just don't take it too seriously. I have 7 albums in my list as of right now. I might think of more later, but I don't want this to go on forever, so we're just gonna go through these 7 in no particular order. Let's get into it. So it's been quite a while since I've talked about Lana Del Rey on this channel, even though she's the one that started this whole channel out. But I thought I'd revisit her discography to see if any of her albums would fit into this list, and lo and behold, her most recent album, Did You Know There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard, I think fits well into this list. The reason being, this album is incredibly powerful throughout its entire runtime, taking Lana's typical Americana nostalgic sound one step further by incorporating elements of trap and soul, and by really digging at some vulnerable themes of family, grief, death, relationships, and so much more. However, I think we can all agree that the Judah Smith interlude is really weird and did not need to be in this album. I get it, Lana's gonna do what Lana's gonna do, this is her album, she can do whatever she wants, I get it. But that doesn't mean that I can't comment on the absolute insanity that is this track, which is literally just a pastor delivering a sermon about love and lust and rhino designers for 5 minutes straight. I don't want to get into the religious side of this, that's not really important here. This track is just not for me. I think I called it camp earlier, but in hindsight, no, this is worse than the Burt Norton interlude. Okay, at least that's like a cute little spacey poem. This I just always skip when I'm listening to this album. And before you call me a hypocrite, yes, I do enjoy the Jon Batiste interlude. I think that works great. I am not anti-interlude, even though it may seem like that if you've watched my rankings. Like I said, the rest of this album is phenomenal. And so from start to finish, you still have a beautiful, powerful, near perfect listening experience, except for just this song. Anyways, don't worry, you'll definitely be hearing more from me about Lana when her new album drops. Finally. High and in the snow until remember when Renee Rapp kind of took over the internet for like a moment in 2024? Hey, I don't care what people say, the new Mean Girls movie was fun, okay? I know it wasn't as good as the original, it wasn't gonna be, but it was still fun. Anyways, the next addition to this list is the debut album by Renee Rapp, Snow Angel, which I strongly recommend you check out if you haven't already. I really cannot say enough about this album, it's so beautiful. Snow Angel is so cohesive, it has this really emotional punk pop sound to it, and Renee's vocals just soar on every single track. It's also incredibly vulnerable. A lot of the tracks are very heartfelt and introspective, focused on Renee's own process of growing up and maturing really throughout her entire life. And as you know, that kind of personal pop sound just really works for me, and I think this album does wonders in that regard. The one track, however, that I don't particularly like is Willow, and I will admit that is entirely just a personal taste thing. It's really the chorus that doesn't work for this song. I don't know, it's just kind of boring to me. And thematically, again, it definitely makes sense within the album. A big theme, like I said, is growing up and maturing, and this song fits right into there with Renee kind of looking onto a past version of herself. But I feel like I Wish already gets at a big emotional climax in regard to growing up, and if we skip straight from there to 23, the end of this album would just be so tight-knit and resolve all the tension from earlier beautifully on this note of, you know, how time continues to pass you by even when you feel like you aren't really growing up and evolving as a person. And of course, you know, those songs are still there. The album still has that resolution. It still comes to that theme. I don't know, it's such a minor complaint. It's kind of funny because the friend who recommended this album to me said Willow is one of his favorites. So like, certainly, it really is just a personal tasting. That's just how I see it, but regardless, it's an incredible album, and if you haven't checked it out, I really could not recommend it more. Of course, I had to throw in a Taylor Swift album into this video, and I would say I had to think long and hard about which of her 11 albums best fit into this list, but if you know me, you already know what I'm gonna say. Red is a perfect album except for one song. Stay, Stay, Stay. It's hard not to love Red. This album is really Taylor Swift's country pop heartbreak sound at its finest, with a beautiful mesh of dubstep pop classics and country ballads that makes for an altogether emotional, invigorating listening experience. And I think critics widely agreed this is a really important cornerstone within her discography. But as you're getting immersed into the album, as you're being taken on this emotional journey, all of a sudden, I hear this nagging in the corner of my ear. I don't know, what's the meme?
When all of a sudden, I hear this agitated, grating voice.
All of a sudden, there's a Target commercial in the middle. As you may or may not know, this is my least favorite Taylor Swift song, and it still is. It's just not interesting at all. And here's the thing, I also did a whole analysis on Red and Taylor's other country albums in another video you're welcome to check out. And as I mentioned there, I think Red really is the pinnacle of Taylor Swift's ability to tell a story through an entire album from start to finish, using the construction of tracks and the ordering to create a narrative. And Stay, Stay, Stay does work for the sake of the narrative of the album, but that doesn't mean it's necessary, let alone that it's good. I think it very well could have been replaced by something else like Message in a Bottle or The Very First Night could have worked much better, but also I think the album still works great without the song entirely if we go straight from We Are Never Getting Back Together to The Last Time. Sure, we reach the emotional climax a little bit earlier, but that's okay. And regardless, I don't like this song. I've dragged this song before multiple times, and you guys have also dragged it as well for me in the comments. I am glad we are all in agreement that this song is like a green stain in an otherwise flawless Red album.
Yeah, for that I say thank you.
We'll keep this one short since I've already talked about this multiple times before. Yes, I've seen all your comments telling me how tasteless I am for not liking Makeup. Sorry, you have not changed my mind. I still don't like this song. Thank You Next has always stood out within Ariana Grande's discography due to just how heartfelt and raw it is, giving us a glimpse into Ariana's trauma throughout the years leading up to this album and the toll it's all taken on her, alongside some of her best vocals and a really powerful mix of pop, R&B, and trap to accompany all of that. Meanwhile, Makeup has always stood out to me within Thank You Next as a song that goes against all that. This is a case where the song itself, I have to admit, really is not that terrible. Like, just as a standalone, this is very Ariana Grande, it's very fitting for her, it does have a lot of clever wordplay to it. Like, I could totally imagine this within an album like My Everything or Dangerous Woman. But something about its placement in this album specifically just bothers me on a visceral level, making it into a song that I genuinely dislike instead of just a song that I'm indifferent to. Like, you're really telling me we go from Bad Idea, a haunting track about Ariana using flings and temporary relationships to numb her own grief, to Makeup, a song about, well, makeup, to Ghostin', possibly the saddest song in Ariana's entire discography about how her grief over losing Mac Miller is hurting all her new relationships? Like, what? Honestly, it's very similar to Stay, 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 again, having this happy-go-lucky, upbeat, like, haha, we don't actually have any problems, we can just kiss and make up, right? Having that kind of track right before the emotional climax of the album. Actually, both albums do this exact same thing, and structurally, I can understand it, but for some reason, I just don't like those songs. It could have to do with the emotional climaxes being some of my favorite songs on those albums respectively, and maybe I just would rather get to those instead of these ones. But I do think Thank You Next would easily be a perfect album without this song. So yeah, Thank You Next.
Thank you next, bitch.
We all know Future Nostalgia to be one of the most impactful albums of the 2010s and undeniably Dua Lipa's best work to date. For an album whose era was cut short by COVID, it ended up cutting through into the mainstream all the more, producing anthem after anthem that really carried us through quarantine without us even realizing. And yet, for all the pop perfection present throughout this album, there is one song that no matter how hard I try, I can never get myself to listen to it. I cannot stand Good in Bed. Whenever this song comes on, I just cannot. I really just cannot. And honestly, most of the song is fine. The verses are fine. It's really the chorus.
I know it's really bad, messing with my head.
For some reason, I just cannot stand the descending chromatic melody in this. It gets on my nerves. It just makes the whole song very unpleasant. That could just be me. But you can't get mad at me for not being able to justify this. I literally pinpointed the exact moment in the song that ruined the whole thing. Okay? It's the same reason I can't stand Case 143 by Stray Kids.
Why do I keep getting attracted? Just so good looker.
And it's just like, why does this song sit there at the end of the album? Like, why could we not just fast forward to the end? Why do we have to go through this annoying track? In fact, here's the thing. There's another song on this album that I don't really like that much. And for the sake of not ruining my Dua Lipa full discography ranking, which I am working on, I promise it will be out sometime, I won't say which song that is. But all I'll say is, for where it's placed in the album, for its message, I can totally get by with it and I understand the function that it serves. Again, like I said before, not every song needs to be perfect to make a perfect album. I promise I'm not making an exception within the list just so I could talk about Future Nostalgia, because every other song is genuinely perfect on this record. I really mean that, and honestly, you probably agree. This album truly is something else, and even a slight blip in quality does not detract from its pop perfection. Even if we included the deluxe edition, it would still make this list. Again, she was really on her game with the pop songs coming out of this era, but I refuse to let Good in Bed pass by, and I will not apologize, even though I'm sure some of y'all have already clicked off by now. Anyways, moving on. I kind of wanted to include a soundtrack in here for fun, you know, to have a little variety going, why not? And I could talk about Arcane again, since frankly the season 1 soundtrack would work perfectly for this list, but I don't want to get roasted for the millionth time, so I picked something else to get roasted for. Colombia, mi encanto. And this isn't really a full album since I'm just looking at the main songs of the soundtrack, not like the entire score of this movie, but it's my list and I wanted to talk about it, so we're counting it. Encanto, one of my favorite Disney movies of all time, and frankly, Disney Animation's last truly incredible film, has an incredible soundtrack. This album truly is a testament to the incredible storytelling in this movie and Lin-Manuel Miranda's writing in general, with each song being so vibrant lyrically and visually, and also being super compelling to listen to on their own. Well, all except for one. This one isn't nearly as egregious as some others on this list, but I don't really care that much for All of You, the closer to the soundtrack. It definitely serves its purpose in the story as a way to reconcile the whole family and resolve all the tension after the movie's emotional climax, but again, just looking at the song as is, I don't find it to be very interesting. Also, Bruno's verse is frankly kind of annoying. This kind of rapid-fire exposition worked superbly in the introductory song because that is intentionally trying to rattle off a ton of info really quickly. Here, he is rattling off reconciliations with his entire family who effectively ostracized him for like years on end. And what do you mean you knew he never left and you heard him every day? Girl, say something. I also don't really like that much that while a big theme in the song is for the family to appreciate each other just for who they are and not for their gifts, especially the sisters, right after the song, all their powers just come back. Like, bruh, did we learn nothing?
Down 999 is a good time. Who the fuck are you? I'm a brat when I'm bumping that. No, I wanna hear my track. Are you bumping that?
For the final album on this list, of course, I have to close it out on Brat, which I feel like is now my millionth time talking about this album on the channel. But I mean, what can I say? It's a really good album. I feel like when people were releasing their lists of like their favorite albums of 2024 toward the end of the year, Brat was always somewhere in the list, if not at the very top of like everyone's lists. This album clearly has stood the test of time as a cornerstone of pop music in 2024, and for good reason. It's phenomenal. It's so well constructed. It has this really addicting avant-garde pop sound to it that hooked in a lot of people. But once again, there just happens to be one irksome song, and that is I Think About It All the Time. And I will admit, this song fits well into the album message-wise. It's very in line with the album's themes of insecurity and Charlie feeling unsure about her place in the music industry and as a woman in general. Something explored very cleverly on other tracks and this one too. What gets me about this song is the production. Something about the way her vocals sound, it's just really bothersome to me, almost kind of kids boppy and unserious with how it's done. It's hard to explain, but I think the best way to demonstrate this is just by comparing this song to the remix with Bon Iver, as I did before. This remix pretty much validated everything I've been saying about this song, because it took the exact same message and lyrics and just had Charlie sing normally over this really beautiful production, and to me it elevated the song immensely.
I think about it all the time, that I might run out of time. I think about it all the time. Was I made for this song?
If this was the version on the original album, Brat would be perfect, because even some other songs on the album, which are good but not stellar to me, still fit in really well. The vibes go perfectly with everything else and make the whole listening experience feel very tight-knit and just very well executed. But I Think About It All the Time has just always stuck out to me as kind of a sore thumb in this album, and that's still the case, making this near perfect. So that's going to wrap it up for this list. Let me know down below what you thought, if you agree or disagree in regard to these albums I talked about, or if you have any other albums you think fit into this list. I definitely have some more that I could talk about, so let's see how this video does, and then maybe I'll make a part 2. But that's going to be all for this one. Have a good day or night whenever you're watching this. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!
Colombia, mi encanto, mi encanto.